Good evening, and welcome to the Sacramento City Unified School District Fentanyl Awareness Parents Meeting. My name is Angela Webb, and I am the CEO of Arrive Alive California, and I will be your moderator tonight. Arrive Alive California is a contracted provider with the Sacramento County Department of Health Services for prevention services, providing education and awareness on behalf of Sacramento County. Arrive Alive California's future-focused fentanyl education and awareness events are a partnership between Sacramento County Department of Health Services and the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office. This event is being recorded and available for future viewing. I want to first thank our panel guests and you, our attendees, for tuning in tonight. This is our first parent meeting in our series we will be having for the Sacramento City Unified School District in order to address the fentanyl crisis here in Sacramento County and the dangers teens are facing with being deceived to death. Fentanyl continues to devastate our community for all ages, but is especially impacting young adults from ages 14 to 17. The goal of this parent meeting is to inform and educate about the dangers of fentanyl and counterfeit pills, raise awareness that one pill can kill you and that drug experimentation is no longer safe, provide resources and tools for parents to use at home, and finally, to save lives. Following the presentation tonight, we will then move to a public question and answer period. Your audio and video will remain disabled. However, you are able to type in your question in the Q&A feature on your screen, and you can submit that to any of our panelists today. So we will now begin with our first panelist. I would like to introduce Jonathan Sharon, a criminalist with the Sacramento County Crime Lab.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan Sharon. I am a criminalist at the Sacramento District Attorney's Laboratory of Forensic Services. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about what's going on here in Sacramento in regards to fentanyl, and give you as parents a little information about what fentanyl is, what we're seeing it in, what it looks like, and just give you some tools as far as being able to identify the different drugs that fentanyl might be in. To start off, I want to talk about the drug trends and what we're seeing here in Sacramento County. On your screen, you can see a representation of what the percentage of fentanyl cases has been in Sacramento County as of 2019 to 2022. You can see this graph is demonstrating that there is a pretty intense rise in the instances of cases that we're seeing here at the laboratory in Sacramento County on fentanyl. This directly corresponds with the amount of fentanyl that we are seeing in Sacramento County as well. So not only are the number of cases that contain fentanyl increasing at a near exponential rate, we are also seeing the amount as in grams or tablets increasing as well in an exponential rate. We right now in Sacramento specifically are seeing what the East Coast was experiencing at the beginning of their opioid epidemic about 5 years ago. So our levels right now are about what the East Coast was dealing with about 5 years ago. So there's potential that this chart and graph is going to get much steeper. We're going to see a lot more cases of fentanyl. We're going to see a lot more quantity of fentanyl coming here in Sacramento County. So this is a good first step to show you where we're at and where we're going. The next slide I want to show you is our what is fentanyl. Kind of discuss a little bit about what fentanyl is and how it is produced. So fentanyl is derived naturally, or I'm sorry, opiates are derived naturally from a plant, so opium poppies. There is some actually prescribed fentanyl applications out there. So it can be found in transdermal patches, lollipops, some sublingual films. Fentanyl can be prescribed for really awful chronic pain, people who are going through cancer treatment. So this is something that is prescribed, can be prescribed by doctors to manage pain and to help somebody deal with difficult surgeries or difficult chronic illnesses. The amount that are in these prescriptions, these fentanyl doses that are intended to be taken by people, are very, very, very small. This next slide is going to give you a representation of how little amount of fentanyl it actually takes to elicit an overdose response. So you can see on the tip of this pencil that is the amount of fentanyl, pure fentanyl, that would take to elicit an overdose response in a person who doesn't have any prior experience to opioid or opioid usage. To give you an example of a kind of correlation with other drugs, you see heroin in this little vial on the left. That's a representative sample of what it would take to overdose on pure heroin. And right in the middle, you can see just a couple of grains of fentanyl. 2 milligrams is what we're estimating to be the lethal dose. And there are other analogs out there that are related to fentanyl. So not just pure fentanyl, but other fentanyl-related chemicals out there that are being produced, such as carfentanil, that is actually much more potent than the fentanyl itself. So you can see in that carfentanil vial, maybe a single grain of carfentanil would be enough to elicit an overdose response. So we're talking about drugs and quantities that are very, very small, and that's what makes this particular drug so dangerous. Now, what we're dealing with here in Sacramento County and what you need to be aware about are the actual illicit forms of fentanyl that we're seeing. We are seeing fentanyl in lots of different shapes, colors, sizes, forms. And here's a couple of pictures of a few of them. We're seeing it in a kind of tar form mixed with heroin. So if you've never seen heroin before, it tends to have a dark, sticky substance type of appearance. We're seeing that in mixed with the fentanyl. We're seeing it in white powders. So something that would look like normal, like flour, or in relations to drugs, it looks similar to cocaine. And we're now starting to see it in a solid form. So fentanyl that is being pressed very tightly together that almost looks like a rock form, in colors varying from white to every color of the rainbow. So we're seeing all sorts of different colors out there in this rock form. And that is something that we are constantly seeing new different forms and new ways that fentanyl is being packaged and produced. The one thing that I really want to kind of show you and make you aware of are the tablets. So these tablets that are being produced that look like other drugs that are actually containing a lethal dose of fentanyl. This is a picture of rainbow fentanyl. So this fentanyl, although it looks like candy, although it looks like it's innocent, it looks like it might be fun and sweet, this has the same potential as any other form of fentanyl to cause an overdose. These tablets, and we're approaching a 50% level, and I think Chris has the actual number as of 2022, but of the amount of tablets that have a lethal dose. So we are getting to the point where almost half of the tablets out there that we're seeing have enough fentanyl to cause an overdose reaction and potentially take a life. So this rainbow fentanyl, this is being marketed specifically to the youth. It's something that may seem a little less scary to take and more attractive. And this is really what you kind of want to keep your eyes out for. On these tablets, you see an M with the square around it and the little 30. These are called M30s. So we are seeing this tablet in particular, this type of press with these type of markings, more than any other tablet here in Sacramento County that's containing fentanyl. We're normally seeing it in a light blue color, but if you see any of these markings, assume that this has a lethal dose of fentanyl. But it's not just these M30s. We're also seeing tablets of alprazolam, Adderall, so things like Xanax, things that would normally not have any kind of opiate or opioid in there, being disguised and marketed as something else. So people are literally being tricked into purchasing something that they aren't intending to take as fentanyl, but it is containing a lethal dose of fentanyl. And currently here in Sacramento County, we have 98, almost 99% of every single tablet that we're getting within the laboratory that we're analyzing is a complete fake. So it's not laced with something, but it is being produced to look like something else. And as I said, 98% have a lethal dose of fentanyl. So this is the crisis, and this is the danger that we are seeing here in Sacramento County. The last little point I want to talk about is just drugs in general. Fentanyl is creeping its way into all sorts of different drug classes. So it's not just in the tablets, and it's not just being disguised as pills, but we're seeing it, and we have seen it here in Sacramento County, it mixed with the methamphetamine supply that we're seeing here. We're seeing it, as I mentioned earlier, with heroin. And lastly, we are also seeing it in cocaine. East Coast right now is dealing with a cocaine mixture. So this is something that we are now seeing here in Sacramento County. Experimentation is a different world right now. So I just want to make you all aware that what fentanyl looks like, what we're seeing it here in Sacramento County, and the supply of what's here right in your backyard.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. So I think it's important, before I bring on our next panelist, to explain why we really feel the need to come to you to speak these things and tell you, but also to reach our children and get right to where our youth are at. We speak in their language, where they're at. And Jonathan had mentioned that these are counterfeit pills. 99% of the counterfeit pills in Sacramento County contain fentanyl, and 99% of those contain a lethal dose of fentanyl. And we're not talking that these are counterfeit pills laced with fentanyl. It's very important to understand the distinction that there is no prescription medication in these pills whatsoever. These are filler pills with fentanyl. There's no medication. So our mission really is to get to the youth, get to their influencers, you wonderful parents and teachers, to let them know that they are being deceived to death. They are particularly being marketed on social media. There's many apps out there that all of our kids are on, that literally put menus right up. Do you want a Xanax? Do you want an Adderall? And in our culture, in our generation, especially these kids today, pills are something that has been very familiar all their life. We have that culture. And unfortunately, the CDC has sounded the alarm that there is a stigma attached with mental health, and kids may think there is a stigma, so that they would reach out to possibly an ad on a social media app, in their innocence, I guess you could say, then rather finding a resources or going to their parents. So just as Jonathan said, this really isn't the landscape, the drug landscape, that they can do any kind of experimentation. So we're here to break the stigma. We're here to provide them resources and really create this awareness that this is just a very deadly epidemic in our area. So thank you for joining us in this. Next up, we have Laura and Chris Didier, parents of Zachary Didier. After losing their son, Laura and Chris have made it their mission to educate and raise awareness on the dangers of fentanyl and other counterfeit prescription pills bought online off the black markets. They're making a difference here locally and around the nation by sharing their son's story. So at this time, let me welcome Laura Didier and Chris Didier.
Angela, I think you might have to enable my video. I can't seem to do it. It says it was disabled by the host. Okay. Okay, I trust everyone can hear me. My name is Laura Didier, and I am the mother of Zach Didier. And my precious son, Zach, was only 17 years old when a counterfeit pill ended his life. We are approaching the 2-year mark of losing Zach. But before I tell you what took his life, I'd first like to share how he lived his life, because he was a vibrant, healthy, and happy young high school kid. As I mentioned, he was only 17. He loved school, so he was always maintaining straight A's. I was very proud of that. He loved athletics, so he was on the track team at Whitney High School, where he attended high school in Rockland. And he played soccer for many years. he also loved music. That really was his passion, was music. And he taught himself how to play piano. He could play so beautifully, and it was kind of his happy place at the piano. He was in the orchestra for many years at school. And just prior to the COVID lockdowns in 2020, he actually starred in Whitney High School's spring production of High School Musical. So if you're familiar with that show, he played the lead role of Troy Bolton and just loved it. He lit up on stage. He'd always loved musical theater his whole life. That was something that we shared together. And he was also working toward his Eagle rank in scouting. So he was just a really busy guy, and he loved life. He had a wonderful circle of friends and a girlfriend that he'd had for a year before he passed away. And we just did not see a fate like this coming for our son. We were both, he and his father, both very plugged in with Zach, and he was our youngest of 3 children, and he had a wonderful relationship with his older siblings. And so we were really blindsided on December 27th of 2020, when Chris went into Zach's bedroom because he hadn't come down yet for the day, and was not uncommon for him to sleep in, as many teenagers do. But unfortunately, when Chris went to get him, he was no longer with us. He was sitting at his desk. His head was on his computer keyboard. His hand was still on the mouse, but he was cold and unresponsive. Despite Chris's efforts with CPR, and our middle child, Sam, was home and called for 911. Our daughter called for me to come over to Dad's house, and they could not revive Zach. It was far too late for him. So they started their investigation. It was a real mystery. Why would this vibrant, healthy, happy young 17-year-old be gone? There were no drugs in his room or any evidence to suggest what had happened to him. They asked us if he had any health conditions, and we replied that he did not. But it was at that point, when the coroner came, that we heard the word fentanyl. They were tragically seeing these trends developing in Sacramento County and Placer County. And when they came upon healthy, happy Zach, their first suspicion was they'd find fentanyl in the toxicology. And that began our research into this crisis. We thought we'd had every drug conversation we needed to have with our kids. None of them had ever, struggled or developed any kind of substance use disorder. So it was not something, that was a part of our family or Zach's life, certainly. But what we came to find out through the investigation, we were able to get his phone unlocked, and to the detectives, that he had actually bought what was marketed to him as a Percocet pill. It looked just like a Percocet pill. He purchased this through a dealer, not someone he knew, not a friend, not anyone he'd ever been acquainted with, but someone that was marketing these pills on Snapchat. And that was where he found it. We also know that it was a very, very new situation for Zach. The first time he connected with this dealer was on December 24th of 2020. And he and one of his really close friends decided to, whether it was experimentation, that's kind of what the friend has indicated, that there was kind of curious boredom experimentation during COVID lockdowns. They each tried one. Those pressed pills must not have had much fentanyl in them, which is really the insidious danger of these pills. You'll never know how much fentanyl is in each one. One might barely have any fentanyl, and the next pill you try could kill 5 people if they split it. And so he did, as I mentioned, try a pill on the 24th and was fine. And for some reason, he decided to experiment one more time on December 26th, again with what he thought was a Percocet pill. And after he went to his room for bed, he did take that pill, and within probably 10 to 12 minutes, he was gone. It happens that quickly with fentanyl. And if no one is near you to see that you're in distress and administer immediate assistance to you, you will not make it. So he did not have a chance against that pill. Once they had done the toxicology report, it was confirmed there was no Percocet. As Jonathan mentioned, these aren't adulterated pharmaceutical pills. These are complete counterfeits from their inception. So fentanyl was the lethal drug that was in his system. And so this is the new situation, and why our young people are so particularly vulnerable to these deaths, because often, like in our son's case, these are young people that are either self-medicating or experimenting, curious. They are often on their own, in their rooms. And so there isn't anybody there to save their life. And these are not overdose deaths. Zach was not seeking fentanyl. He had no intention of ingesting fentanyl. And so in his decision to experiment with a Percocet pill, unfortunately, it turned out to be a fatal one, because he was poisoned by the fentanyl that was surreptitiously inserted into that pill. And that's why we wanted to be a part of the solution. When we did get confirmation of this, and this was nearly 2 years ago, as I mentioned, there wasn't awareness. There weren't these kinds of outreach efforts, because it was just, as I mentioned, just becoming, the authorities were really just getting their hands around what this crisis was. And so we decided to be public and speak out, even though we were nervous to tarnish the beautiful memory of our child, and worried how people might judge him. And that's really, like what Angela was saying, we want to break down these stigmas. We want our young people to understand if they where their resources are. And Zachary certainly knew that he could talk with us. What he did not know was that people were selling fake pills and marketing them as real medications. And so this is this new category of victim that we really want to make sure that parents understand, because this idea that you might get red flags, that, maybe it used to be that if your child was starting to develop a substance use disorder, you would see the signs of that happening. And if they weren't, if they were leading a healthy life and had good relationships and healthy choices, they could be on this healthy path in life. But often in adolescence, it's a time of experimentation. It's a time of testing things out. And that might start you down a more dangerous path. And initial experimentation or self-medication could lead to recreational use of substances that might continue down. You might become more habitual, user. And eventually these, substances are something that your body might become dependent on. And you might get, you might find yourself dealing with a substance use disorder. And at the end of kind of that progression, you may accidentally ingest too much of your drug of choice. But in that progression, as I mentioned, there usually are red flags, things that friends and family would notice. The things we tell parents to look for, the grades slipping, the friends groups changing, and to intervene and help your young person out. But now with fentanyl, and especially the deception with these pills, because we're finding now we've come to know just a tremendous number of parents around the country who have suffered this in their family. And for the vast majority of them, it's coming in the form of these fake pills, because one pill can kill. And these are younger people that are, they're opioid naive. They haven't developed a tolerance for opioids. They trust, as Angela mentioned before, there's a level of trust around pills and pharmaceuticals as medicine. And, our young people they're not, going to be as educated on all of these things, especially because this crisis is newer to our area. And so, as much as we've spoken about this, often, I'll still encounter, people who still aren't exactly sure of what this crisis is and still think, oh, it can't touch my family, or it can't. But it can happen as easily as, your young person is at college and they're studying for their first round of finals in college, and somebody offers them what they tell them is an Adderall, to help them study. Or a friend, that we know, their son struggled with back pain. He'd had surgery, and someone said, oh, I know some guy that sells Percocet on Snapchat, and it wasn't a Percocet. So it's just, this is how easy and quick it can happen if we aren't aware of what is out there, and just making sure that young people understand, if a pill did not come from a pharmacy, a prescription that was prescribed to them, that they should not take that pill. It's just not the slippery slope that it used to be. And now it really is a minefield out there. And one misstep without understanding where these landmines might be, it could be their last step. And I would just like to end my part by saying that I do work with a nonprofit in this space, in this awareness space. It's called Song for Charlie, and the website is songforcharlie.org. And it was started by two parents who lost their son. He was 22, and it was a counterfeit Percocet pill. And so they have just devoted, all of their energy into this nonprofit, and it's all about raising awareness. There are wonderful videos, explainer videos on there. A lot of parents will ask, how do we start this conversation with our kids? You can go to Song for Charlie. All of the materials on there are free to use, free to share, and they're great. They're a great way to get yourself educated on this crisis, so you can speak with some real solid knowledge about it, and then just open those conversations, with your kids, because it's all about, not having this be a conversation around morality. This can happen to any student, to any person, no matter the family background, the neighborhood, because kids are being deceived, and that truly can happen in any family. So I really appreciate all of you for logging on tonight and learning more about this. I again encourage you to visit songforcharlie.org for more information.
Thanks, Laura. My name is Chris Didier, and I am Zach's dad. And Laura, like Laura mentioned already, we've learned quite a bit, and what we want to do is to share our experience to prevent other tragedies from happening to other families. As you may have heard, we mention this occasionally, that what happened to us was something we never really expected. There were no red flags in Zach's situation. And what I understood as Zach's dad was the dangers that were prevalent in his world were drunk drivers, or him being irresponsible as a new driver, or maybe trying out different types of drugs and then going down that primrose path or that slippery slope of addiction. But with today's landscape having drastically changed, there's really no time for trying to deal with addiction, because, as Laura mentioned, a person can truly tiptoe one time down that path of experimentation, not having had any experience whatsoever, and it's lights out. And that's so unfair. And when we go to student assemblies at schools, we really want to reach out to these kids and say, guys, this is not the landscape your parents had. This is very different, and it's unfair that this has happened to you. And add to the stresses and trauma of COVID restrictions on top of it, this is something that really does cut to the core with mental health and the challenges of managing stress and anxiety, because those are real, and we want to have an open conversation. One of the things that CDC reports, or Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or all the different deaths that occur in our country. So this chart is comparing 2015 to 2020 of fentanyl involved deaths. And I like to call it a growth chart. It just compares those 2 years. And you can see the age demographics on the bottom. And that dashed line here is just an average of about 6-fold. In other words, in 2020, 6 times more people died from fentanyl than in 2015. But why we really want to reach out to our youth, especially in schools, is what's happened to their age. 14-fold greater, over 2 times more of an impact than any other age demographic when you compare 2015 to 2020. And so really, why is that? Well, there are several factors we feel can be a player. The first one that came up in my mind is the use of a cell phone. Cell phones have been a major part of our youth in their upbringing. It wasn't something I certainly had when I was in high school, but our kids have. And we have to really think of their mindset and their influences as a young adolescent-minded person and how they're influenced. Cell phones have helped them solve math homework problems. It's helped them solve challenges they never really expected. It's helped them climb that social ladder of acceptance with their peer group. It's even helped them learn to play a musical instrument. But what really many people don't understand is that the cell phone is also something being exploited by drug traffickers and drug peddlers, mostly on social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, Snapchat. And that's something that we really need to push to educate. Much of the traffic that's on social media that involves selling any kind of product that normally is sold in a pharmacy or at a dispensary is something that's typically illicit. And in today's market, fentanyl is going to be involved. Another influencer is the mindset of a legitimate prescription pill. Prescription pills prescribed by a doctor dispensed at a pharmacy are far more common today than they were when I was growing up. We live in a society of a pill popping culture. Even many of our youth today they themselves have been prescribed a legitimate pill from their doctor for anxiety management or pain management. Many of these youths have seen their siblings, their cousins, their friends at school having prescriptions of various types. And even our dog Jake has several prescriptions for managing seizure control and Addison's disease. So in the mind of a growing adolescent brain, when legitimate prescription pills have been normalized in our culture today and give the appearance of a safe product, and the accessibility of these products through their cell phone that gave the appearance or being marketed as safe and legitimate, but when in fact they are not legitimate, creates a potential of a dangerous situation. CDC also reports various drug types. This chart is 2014. Again, the age is sorted on the bottom. And all it does is it just shows all the different types of drugs involved in drug-related deaths in 2014. And the H is for heroin, M is meth, benzos, cocaine, and fentanyl has been highlighted in yellow here. And so for a certain age, you can see, like, for example, in the early 20s, heroin was involved in over 40% of drug-related deaths in 2014. This is 2021. Fentanyl is consumed the entire illicit drug market. It's pretty much in everything. It has been adulterated in controlled substances or illicit substances such as methamphetamines and cocaine and heroin, but also is being utilized and marketed as a legitimate prescription pill when they are in fact not legitimate. They're just simply fake pills. Fentanyl, as you may have heard, is changing everything. And these numbers are scary to me. When you look at what has happened and what has been reported by the CDC, over 71,000 lives have been lost in 2021 from a fentanyl-involved fatality or death. which is enough to fill the newest NFL stadium in Inglewood, California, for you Chargers and Rams fans. That, if you do the math, that's about a fatality every 7 minutes, or almost 200 fatalities a day. So this is alarming. One of our biggest struggles in trying to bring awareness and education is simply the stigma that comes with it. We really, really, really need to get past stigma, because when a family or a person has no direct experience with an illicit drug such as fentanyl, they may just associate or compartmentalize with something they do know, and that is, oh, that's just a drug, shouldn't be using it, I feel bad, probably they were addicted, they just lost their addiction problem or challenge. And sometimes victim shaming kind of gets associated or connected to that, and our message gets lost. Part of that includes the lethality of fentanyl and the deception that's being used to try to sell to a consumer. And what's sad is many of these consumers are unwittingly consuming fentanyl, having no idea that what they're taking and what they're ingesting is something that is going to be so much more dangerous and can take their life. So we really need to get past that and to explain that if anybody is purchasing something that normally comes from a pharmacy, but they're purchasing it off social media or on the streets, or maybe vape devices or edibles, or even heroin or cocaine, there's a high chance that it's going to be involving fentanyl. The Drug Enforcement Administration estimates well over 98% of prescription pills sold outside of a pharmacy are considered counterfeit pills. Many crime labs only see 100% of the pills that they seize are counterfeit. They don't see legitimate pills being marketed on social media. They only see counterfeit pills. And recently, the Drug Enforcement Administration announced that they estimate about 60%, or 6 out of 10 pills, have the potential to be lethal. So if a consumer is buying a prescription pill on social media, there is a strong chance that they're playing an incredibly dangerous game of Russian roulette, where you may have a bullet in almost every other chamber of a 6-chamber barrel. So we have to get the word out. As a father, when we talk at these parent info nights, one of the biggest concerns that I have is the mindset of, well, this is dangerous, thank you for this, but I really don't think this could happen to me or my family, and certainly not my child. And really want to stress that that is really an inappropriate mindset to think. I think that is a very dangerous mindset to think, because this could happen literally to anybody. It is something that we really need to stress. Zach was not looking for fentanyl. He had no experience with fentanyl. He had no understanding of it, but fentanyl found Zach. And it's something that we need to drive home. And so from one parent to another, my advice is to get smart. Thank you for being here. That's a great start to understand, what's really going on, and absolutely sit down and have a discussion with your loved ones. I personally guarantee if you aren't doing that, there is someone on social media that is. So don't lose the opportunity as a parent or a caregiver or a guardian to help your family member to learn and understand what the truth is and what's really, really going on. Because I do believe as we spread awareness and education, we can absolutely have meaningful and measurable impact to change things and to make a difference and improve our numbers and save lives. I know this is a very tricky topic, and it's very difficult to have a sit-down conversation with your youth, especially when they're trying to, distance themselves. Like, I know what to do. I'm invincible. I'm smart enough. Please stop lecturing me. But I'm telling you, the alternative is a much more difficult conversation. Avoidance does not extinguish our fears, as Maria Folio says it. Taking action does. And getting smart on it communicating with your youth, I highly recommend talking to the parents of your children's friends, and just spreading awareness is an essential key. Again, thank you for the opportunity to talk and for taking the time tonight to speak with us.
Thank you so much, Chris and Laura Didier, for joining and sharing your story of your precious son. And that is the reason we come here to these Zooms or in person or student assemblies, town hall meetings. We are really sounding the alarm of not only there is this epidemic in our nation, but right here in Sacramento County. And it was about a year ago that our district attorney, Anne Marie Schubert, went before the Board of Supervisors here in Sacramento County and said, we have something that we need to address. And it was after the Crime Lab had reported the numbers in Sacramento County, fentanyl related deaths were more than gun-related homicides in Sacramento County. So we as Sacramento leaders and educators have partnered together to really bring this message of safety, awareness, that this is truly here in our backyard. And as Jonathan said earlier, we're just starting to see what the East Coast has already been seeing for the last 5 years. So it's time that we get even more loud and do more presentations. Another thing, working with the Department of Health Services and their mission, whether this is overdoses on fentanyl or fentanyl poisoning, substance abuse users are being deceived, coming together as a community, understanding that our teens are still suffering through the COVID lockdowns, and hence the reason why there is so much stigma with seeking help, and they're just going to do this in their bedroom. So that's where we come out and provide them the resources. Like Laura said, with the Song for Charlie is a fantastic organization. We will provide a QR code for you so you can get your phones out, take a picture, and it links several different websites that you can have resources. If you know yourself maybe, or a family member or your son or daughter that may be suffering with a substance abuse disorder, or just to get the conversation started, that's where those resources are extremely helpful. And I do want to give a shout out. I promise you're going to have some time to type in some questions. I'm starting to see them come in. But I do want to commend the Sacramento City Unified School District. You are the first in our area to vote for having Narcan on campus. And I actually have the divisional manager with the Department of Health Services, who is a partner of ours. We could not bring our future focused fentanyl awareness presentation to schools without their help. We have Division Manager Lori Miller here. She's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the different efforts they're doing in the county for our students and our people.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lori Miller, Division Manager for Substance Use Prevention and Treatment here in Sacramento County. So this is serious. This is such a serious crisis, as you've heard from the other panelists, and the danger is so very real. So what I wanted to talk to you about tonight is some of the signs of overdose, and then provides an intervention called Narcan, and provide some information around that and how to get it and where to get help if you or your loved one is struggling. So some of the signs of overdose, sometimes it may be hard to detect for people. Sometimes it may be very easy to detect signs of overdose or fentanyl poisoning. So some of those signs may be that the person is unresponsive. They may have very pinpoint small pupils. Their skin is very cold and clammy. Their lips or their fingernails may be blue or purple or gray, depending on the person's skin color. Their breathing may be very suppressed, very slow, or they may not be breathing at all. And you may also see that a person may appear like they're sleeping, like they're snoring, like there's gurgling sounds. And so sometimes when young people are in social situations, you may think that your friend or their friend is just, taking a nap or sleeping, when in fact they're in an overdose or poisoning situation. So these signs and symptoms are very important to pay attention to and to have knowledge of and just be aware of, so that we can respond and act accordingly. So next I want to talk about Narcan, and some of you may have heard about Narcan, some of you not, but Narcan is an FDA approved medication. It's basically a nasal spray. It reverses the overdose and restores normal breathing, because when a person's in an overdose situation or a poisoning situation, their breathing slows and eventually stops. And so if a person stops breathing within 4 minutes, brain damage can occur. And then on average, it takes an ambulance or emergency medical services 7 minutes to arrive to a scene. And so time is of the essence when it comes to responding and reacting and intervening in an overdose or poisoning situation. So Narcan is very safe and effective for people of all ages, and it's not harmful. So if a person is not in an overdose or poisoning situation, it's not going to hurt them. And it's a life-saving intervention that everyone should have. Everyone should have it available and accessible in your backpack, in your purse, in your desk, at home, somewhere where you can reach it very quickly, because if it's locked in a cabinet somewhere, it may be too late to save that person's life. So it's important to have Narcan on hand, have it available, have it accessible, and I'll talk to you a little bit about where to get Narcan if you don't have it in your possession already. So how do you use Narcan? Basically, I'm not sure if folks can see that, but it's a box, looks like this, and it has 2 doses per box. And there's an instruction sheet inside the box. There's also a QR code outside of the box if somebody is in a situation where they're using it, and think of using the QR code to track the person in an overdose situation. We want to collect some data around that, but most people don't think about that in an emergency situation. So basically there's 2 doses per box. It's very, very simple to give. And the doses are basically just a nasal spray. So if you've ever used a nasal spray before, it's very simple. So you basically just open up the package, you place the nozzle in the person's nostril, and you basically press the plunger. And because fentanyl is so potent, is so strong, is the most dangerous thing out there in our community, it will take at least 2 of these doses, this full box, to restore the person's normal breathing and to be able to save their life. Sometimes if it's other opioids, it may only take 1 dose, but typically it takes 2 doses. And if the person's not responsive during the first dose, you wait 2 to 3 minutes, and to see if you see any responsiveness in the person. And if there's none, then you give another dose. You cannot hurt the person. There's no cap in terms of how many doses you can give a person in order to save their life. And so it's just important to make sure that you have the Narcan available. That's the most important thing. So next I want to talk about, where do you get it? Unfortunately, in Sacramento County, sometimes it's very accessible. Sometimes it may be hard or not available in certain environments, but there are ways to get it. You can certainly get Narcan through the Department of Health Services. You can, and Angela's got some resources at the end, and you can contact our office and we can make it available to you. Narcan is available in California through your local pharmacies with or without a prescription. So certainly if you have health insurance, there may be a small copay. And then there's obviously a fee if it's not covered through your health insurance. So it's available over the counter in any of your local pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Walmart, any of those type of pharmacies. You can also get it from your healthcare provider and request a prescription. It's very simple. Other ways to get Narcan in the community for those that may be regular users of substances, you can go to your local harm reduction organizations or individuals that may be struggling with opioids already and may be in treatment. We have medication assisted treatment providers in our community that also give out Narcan for free. You can also get it online for free. I believe that you can get 1 or 2 doses through a couple of websites. GetNaloxoNow.org is one, and then NextDistro, DISTRO.org is another website that you can get on there, fill out a quick application and get free Narcan. So again, I encourage everyone to have Narcan available and accessible to them. And for those people who may be seeking help, maybe you're a young person, maybe you have a family member that's struggling with substance use, there is help out there, and we want you to get the help. We want to be a resource for you. There are people out there that care about you and love you and want to support you if you are in a situation where you are using substances, and even those that may be experimenting. And because fentanyl is so potent, you can become addicted so very quickly off 1 or 2 times of use. And so we want to make sure that you understand that there's help out there once you feel the need to access that help. So talk to a safe person, talk to a trusted adult, talk to your friend, talk to anyone. If you are struggling with substance use, talk to your healthcare provider. Sacramento County services are available to you. We just want you to know that there is hope, there is help, and there's treatment out there available to you. And in addition to the Song for Charlie website, the partnership between the Sacramento County Department of Health Services, the District Attorney's Office, and Arrive Alive, along with all of the grieving parents that have lost loved ones here in our county, and others who have joined us in this effort, have launched this onepillcankillsac.com campaign as well. We have also one in Placer County, but onepillcankillsac.com, great resources, some personal stories, lots of information on that website as well.
Thank you so much, Lori, for sharing that with us. And as promised, we are going to open this up to all of our special viewees watching today. We've actually gotten a couple of great comments and or questions, and I'm going to read this, so bear with me. A teacher wrote in and said, I had a student OD on opioids in my high school classroom 3 weeks ago. It was an incredibly traumatic experience for the students in my class and myself, and of course for the student. The student's life was saved by the use of Narcan that our school nurse had. We did provide general information about the events to the students in my class, but we were not able to speak more specifically about opioids, fentanyl. How specifically do I get to speak to my students about these drugs? Well, let me tell you, as Chris's slides shows, fentanyl is probably not even in the health education textbooks. So it is imperative that we are talking not only community members, but teachers, family members, and get this conversation going, that fentanyl is here in our community. I honestly, to this teacher that wrote this, it breaks my heart. I can't tell you how many times we have been on campuses that the nurses have told me counterfeit pills are on our campus. We've already had to use Narcan 3 times this year. We've already had this in the bathroom. We've already had this. So because of confidentiality, they're not allowed to share that information. But no names were mentioned. They could share that to me, and I didn't share which schools those were at. So we're hearing it over and over and over again. So absolutely, Narcan is essential. The description she is giving, Miss Lori, is exactly what happened to my student. The Narcan was the only reason he is still alive. So thank you to our partners and providing that excellent explanation. We have another question here. Is fentanyl showing up in marijuana products as well? Great question. Our number one asked question by the kids. Jonathan.
So here in Sacramento County, we at the laboratory have not seen that yet, but that is, if you do some research out there, there seems to be a lot of instances and cases of where there is some sort of mixture in a vape product or marijuana product. When you're dealing with fentanyl, remember we're talking about a very, very small amount. And that is something that if a person who is packaging drugs for sale, it's got marijuana on one table and it's got processing on the same table that had a bunch of fentanyl on there, there's a possibility that there can be some transfer from one packaging to another. So that's something that is a possibility. Is it running rampant? Not yet, but it is showing up in every other single drug class and in great numbers. So it is probably not far from being the next common thing that unfortunately we're going to be seeing is those type of mixtures commonly.
Great. Chris, do you want to add to that? I think.
Yeah, do you
like,
mind if I screen share?
Not at all. No, go ahead.
All right, when we talk at the assemblies, marijuana is a very common question, and it's usually something involving vape devices. And I think that our young kids today are very connected. They're probably the most connected of any generation. They're very smart, very savvy, and you really can't trick them. You have to be accurate with your numbers, and you have to back it up. And Laura and Angela and Jonathan, Lori, we all work really hard to what we share is correct or what is being reported. So I'm going to screen share since this is a topic that comes up a lot. I think this is the one. Fentanyl and vapes. Do you guys see a slide that says that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so in 2019, in September of 2019, I highlighted it here in red, was the first reported fentanyl involved fatality that was connected to a vape device. And it was discovered by the San Diego Field Division, and they put out a bulletin to all the other bulletins to say, hey guys, heads up, we found fentanyl in a vape pen. And the investigation basically had to talk with the roommate who survived and admitted that he and his roommate were vaping what they were told had fentanyl in their vape tanks. And then if you do a recent Google search, you'll see what's going on. There are several. I highlighted a few here. This one was last year, about a year ago in Tennessee, where a student was basically struggling with what appeared to be overdose symptoms and was treated for that, as well as a few other people. A different student admitted that that was his vape, and an investigation was going on last year. Earlier this year in February, there were 3 vape pens discovered in one day. When a similar situation, it was during either between classes or at a lunch break, where students started exhibiting overdose type symptoms. Their friends ran to the office to say, hey, we need to call 911. Someone's, not doing well. And they were treated. And there were 3 vape pens that had been tested and had contained either fentanyl or heroin in it. And the students later didn't realize what they were inhaling had fentanyl or heroin in it. They thought it was marijuana. So the bottom line on this is it's not that hard to research. I think the commonality here is when a student is in high school and they're between classes or on lunch break, they're going to take a hit of a vape they think is a normal vape, either with nicotine or marijuana, and not realize what they're actually consuming could have fentanyl in it. It's becoming a little bit more common. I don't think it's something serious like a counterfeit pill yet, but it's something that's getting more common. It's on the horizon. It's what I'm seeing.
Great. Thank you for answering, Jonathan, and expanding upon that. Chris, let's see. Thank you for providing this information. And as a parent of 2 teenagers, this is really relevant for my family. I appreciate your outreach to the community. You are so welcome to that parent. And then followed up with, which social media sites are most prevalent in selling fentanyl? There's several.
Yeah, I mean, just anecdotally, I can share that in our circle, this horrific club of parents that have come to know each other through our common tragedy, Snapchat is very prevalent in that, but I've heard a lot of stories as well with Instagram and, Facebook Marketplace. So it's not limited to just one. But I know, a lot of the young kids, especially the junior high school kids, kind of their go-to is Snapchat. The drug dealers know that. There are, measures being taken by the social media companies to combat this, but it's really going to take, those efforts plus, our education efforts, so kids know what to look out for, and just to not trust anything, regardless of the platform, just don't trust anything that isn't coming from a legitimate source. Like a
Right.
pharmacy.
It's not, thank you, Laura, that you hit it on the head. If it's not coming from your doctor or pharmacy, don't take it. We have really hit that landscape and the drug landscape in this area, especially. And we're not talking that the drug dealers are meeting him in a dark alley somewhere. They're making home deliveries. So it is Snapchat, it's money apps, it's YouTube. There are so many that I have discovered just through this research. And although the social media companies are trying to do something, if they disband or block an account, as we all know, all the person has to do is open up a new account. And unfortunately, the drug dealers are in this for big business. They're in it for greed and they're in it for money. So they've already captured what your child or us can get away with, and we get out with one click. Normally it will take on their sites 5 clicks to get out of their page. So, and by then they have your kid's information. So, it's different for each household. There are parental monitoring apps out there. Bark, B as in boy, ARK, like a dog, bark.com is great because it's up to date with the emojis that the drug dealers are using. It scans, it doesn't read and report what's going on, but it does scan for information. We're not sponsored by them, but they are a great resource. Just Google parental applications for your phones. Know your children's passcodes to get in. All of those different things could very well save their life in the end. So it is 7:01 to the nose, and we have recorded this presentation. We are going to make it available. I'm going to end on this and let everyone jump in there. I think this is so important. If you have to go, you can catch up later. We'll have this recorded, but I think it's very important to end on this. And the question is, why does fentanyl exist? Does a small amount create addiction? I'm just trying to understand why the drug dealers are using it in the first place. And this is our number one question asked by adults. So we've hit the two big number one questions that we get asked, students and adults. And as I said, this is a big business, but I don't think we highlighted the fact that fentanyl, this is an illicit fentanyl. This is not a prescription fentanyl. These are chemicals. These are synthetic. So they are mass producing. It's cheap. It's very inexpensive to produce. And the potency is 50 times more powerful than heroin and 100 times more powerful than morphine. So that's why you're seeing fentanyl in all of the different drug categories, and then some, is because if they can get someone hooked, they've got a customer ideally for life. And that's unfortunately those that pass away or die from the exposure is collateral damage, as what a DEA agent once said. That's not what they're looking at. They're looking at a customer for life to get them addicted on such a substance. So that is to answer your question. Does anyone else want to jump in there? And
I was just going to add, as Jonathan showed how very little of fentanyl is, how potent it is. It's very easy to smuggle. That's the other thing. It's very easy for them to get these small amounts that go a long way. So it's pure economics, and unfortunately, some customers die and they're not losing any sleep over it. But I am, I mean, I cried every day for the last 2 years, and that's why I will keep talking about this. And we are in the exception. We did get a conviction against the dealer that sold to Zach. The evidence was very overwhelming. And so he is now incarcerated in prison for his role in deceiving our son in this way. But it's very rare. It's very hard to prove these cases, and the dealers know that. So there's not a lot of backlash on them if they have a customer that dies. So that's why awareness, what we want to do is make sure that the kids know what to avoid, that they know what the real risks are out there because Song for Charlie conducted some research, targeted research with focused youth groups, and the most, a great number of young people still rank heroin and cocaine as more dangerous than fentanyl. So when it is, obviously, as you now know, it is so much more dangerous than anything else out there. And so it's really just getting that, arming our kids with information, making sure they understand the real risks that are out there, because these dealers are in it for a buck and they don't care about our kids.
Yes, you hit it on the nose. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to do concluding thoughts, comments?
Sure. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share. I really do believe that educating and talking about this is the critical thing. I think BARC and other parent control apps are a good thing. However, you have to respect your teenager's intelligence, because I guarantee you just go to YouTube and there are workarounds. You can find it yourself. So if they want to connect, they usually have Chromebooks assigned for school. So they're on the internet. And if they don't even have a phone, their friends do. So I think the number one I cannot overstress thing to do is to get smart and talk to your kids and talk to their friends and their friends' family, and just work together to solve this, because that is a really, really important thing. And like Laura mentioned, the study that was done, 2 out of 5 youth between ages of 13 and 24 believe that they have an understanding of what fentanyl is, but 68% of them, as Laura mentioned, believe that heroin and cocaine is far more dangerous, and that's not true. It just isn't true. So the fact that fentanyl is 50 times more potent than heroin is a big indicator. So let's get smart and share the word. And thank you again, Angela, for the opportunity to talk.
Absolutely. And before you go, as promised, here is our code. Go ahead and take a picture. Our QR code, it leads you to all of the represented here. And we're going to be adding to this as well. So that being said, I thank you very much for Department of Health Services in Sacramento County, and thank you to the Sacramento City Unified School District for inviting us on this very, very important topic. Hopefully we will be out in the first of the year to all of your schools. We are doing these presentations, student assemblies, whether it's a classroom version, I'll do this for the teachers, whether it's a full school assembly, high school, middle school, we're on fire and we're here to save kids' lives. And for parents, places of worship, there's no bounds, there's no boundaries for me to go. So we're here for you. Thank you again for your time, and let us know, reach out if you need any answers. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.